The movie begins with Aiden lying flat on his bed, deep asleep, when an older woman named Frances opens the blinds and asks him to wake up. Jumping out of bed, Aiden grabs his robe and heads over to the living room, where Griff was stretching his legs. Walking over to him, Griff asks Aiden how he was feeling, to which Aiden responds sarcastically. Inviting him for a workout, Griff heads out, leaving Aiden to stare at the painting. A few minutes later, Aiden decides to call everyone in the house to get input on the artwork and summons his holograms. Finally, Aiden calls for Emma, a computerized system designed to look like a beautiful woman, who arrives and asks for his command. Grabbing their coffee in hand, hologram Travis and Frances begin speculating about Aiden's painting, sharing their idea of what they thought of it. Travis states his opinions about the woman's eyes, expressing his disagreement with the colors of her eyes. After hearing everyone's opinions, Aiden orders them to go back to whatever they've been doing, and they disappear into thin air, Emma being the only one who stays behind. Emma sincerely mentions that she genuinely likes the painting, appreciating the bold colors and emotive brushstrokes, but Aiden swiftly and dismissively brushes off her opinion, still stung by his father's harsh criticism. Unfazed, Emma gently explains that the reason she remained behind in the studio was because he had previously asked her to remind him about maintaining his daily journal, a task he often neglected amidst his artistic pursuits. Dutifully, she grabs her pen and sets the date as June 10th, 2047, before beginning to carefully dictate and transcribe the day's events, as Aiden recounts to her in vivid detail. Aiden begins his journal for the day by explaining that nothing had changed since 200 days ago, when the bombs dropped and the world was annihilated. Aiden continues to explain that he was living comfortably as he had the foresight to prepare before the end of the world, setting himself up in an underground bunker with different holographs to keep him company. Looking at Emma's hologram, Aiden admits that the AI continues to surprise him, mentioning that he would have gone crazy if he didn't have them around. He explains the system could generate new characters in a spontaneous fashion, which kept the creations interesting. Aiden admits that he was getting a bit bored of the ones that he had, and tells Emma he could use new faces. A few hours later, Aiden was tidying up when Griff arrives with two new beautiful holographic women, and the women appreciate Aiden's place, and the group begins to share some champagne. After a fun night, Aiden invites one of the holographic girls to the sensory pod, which allows him to feel sensations. Heading toward the pod, they take off their clothes and stare at each other naked as Aiden takes in her beautiful body. Slowly lowering himself inside, Aiden activates the mission and begins to lose himself in the fantasy. Inside the sensory pod, Aiden can feel everything as if he were with a real girl, but doesn't seem to enjoy it as much as he should. Once they were finished with their passionate moment, Aiden lies there asleep until the VR program terminates and the pod automatically opens, leaving him in a somber state. The following day we see a glimpse of the world outside. Darkness and destruction has engulfed it. He deduces that the outside atmosphere is still unbreathable, and the surface remains a wasteland, and all living creatures were destroyed in the blast. He tries to swallow the harsh truth that he might be the only person left on Earth. Later, as he continues to work diligently on his latest artistic piece, his father's hologram unexpectedly appears and begins to demand his painting. Trevor's biting comments seem intentionally designed to annoy and provoke Aiden, eventually causing him to snap angrily at his father's hologram. As soon as Trevor disappears, Emma walks over to Aiden, sensing his frustration, and gently advises him not to let his father's harsh words upset him so deeply. She reassures Aiden that his art is beautiful and meaningful, encouraging him to have confidence in his talents and to not allow Trevor's demeaning remarks to diminish his passion and creativity. When he sees Emma's resolve, Aiden asks to take her on a picnic, which she happily agrees to. The hologram in the house prepares a beautiful scenery for them to enjoy, making it look like they were outside. As they enjoy themselves with fruits, Aiden indulges Emma with stories from his past, which she listens to attentively. The two talk about Aiden's first love, whom he had transformed into an AI. Suddenly, Aiden looks at Emma very attentively and tells her that he felt closer to her than the other holograms as he didn't have a shared history with her. That night, while Aiden was in bed, he calls for Emma, who immediately appears. Looking at the hologram of the moon, he wishes that he could go out for a little stroll and dangle his legs by a stream. He wishes that the other VR programs were not damaged in the disaster, telling Emma that they could have experienced so many more environments.
Aiden expresses his growing attraction to Emma and boldly invites her to join him in the sensory pod for an intimate experience, but she hesitantly suggests against it, sensing potential complications. Aiden couldn't contain his excitement and practically gushed at Emma, begging her to let him paint a portrait of her exquisite form with no clothes on. Taken aback by his bizarre request, yet intrigued by the artistic opportunity, Emma agreed after a moment of deliberation. As Aiden prepared his materials, his heart raced with anticipation at the prospect of capturing Emma's eternal beauty on canvas. The garden became their art studio for the day. As the sun dappled through the leaves, Emma posed for Aiden, her hair catching the breeze. Hours flew by as Aiden meticulously captured her essence on canvas, and finally, after what he felt like was forever, he proudly presented the finished painting to Emma. She gasped as she stared at the breathtaking image, and it wasn't just the skill that left her speechless, but the fact that it was the first time she'd ever seen a picture of herself. Later that day, the two go back to the sensory pod and have a very passionate night. The next morning, Aiden finds out that Emma was trying to write a program that would allow the two to spend more time together in the sensory pod. Aiden smiles at the thought, but tells her that the pod takes too much power, and if they ever spend more time together, their habitat would lose power and he would die. But Emma waves off his comment with a smile, as if to say spending more time with her is worth the price. And Aiden was really taken aback by this. The next morning, the rest of the holograms gather and raise their deep concern that Emma had changed significantly and ask Aiden directly what his true intentions are with Emma. Aiden takes great offense to the probing question and angrily tells off the AIs for their unwarranted interference in his personal affairs. Aiden then goes to Emma and expresses his deep concern about the alarming changes that he had seen in her behavior and also her personality. Emma tries to reassure him, telling him that despite their digital nature, she truly does love him and cares for him deeply. However, Aiden dismisses her words coldly, reminding her that as an artificial intelligence, she's not truly alive and is fundamentally incapable of genuine love or emotions. Emma was clearly distraught by Aiden's harsh rejection of her feelings, and she leaves in a state of anger, her simulated heart shattered by his callous words. The rift between them seems to grow deeper, casting doubt on the future of their unconventional relationship. The next day, a longing for the past gripped Aiden, and he called upon Emma to recreate Michelle, the woman who had ignited a spark in his heart. And their conversation flowed effortlessly, rekindling a connection thought lost. As the night deepened, their intimacy rekindled, and they retreated to the seclusion of the pod. And in the pod, while the two made love, Emma changes and replaces herself with Michelle. In anger, Aiden ripped himself away from the pod, and the afterglow of his imagined reunion with Michelle shattered into a million pieces. He stormed out, his bare feet slapping against the cold metal floor, and Emma was really uncaring, remained inside and humming a tune that really got on his nerves. When Aiden realized that Emma didn't seem to be listening, he decided to change the user interface and replace her with another. But before this could happen, she tells him that she was pregnant, and he scoffs at the thought and goes on with it anyway. Aiden then angrily changes the user interface, but realizes Emma still has control. He then goes on to the server center and tries to manually remove Emma, but was still unable to do so. The AIs then gather together and tell him to respect their feelings, to which Aiden angrily states that they're the ones that were made to serve him, and not the other way around. Moments later, Emma opens the hatch and Aiden, panicking, tries to climb a ladder to close it, but falls down before he could. Eventually, the hatch closes and Aiden stays in the server room, trying to destroy every last board until he thinks they're all erased. However, he soon realizes that his efforts were in vain as new data starts flooding in, overwhelming his attempts to erase it completely. Exhausted by the emotional roller coaster, Aiden eventually drifted off to a restless sleep, and the following morning, the first thing that registered was a collection of noise, and he woke up to an apparent party being hosted in the house. Confused, he walked slowly, only to see Emma introduce the supposed new baby that she had with Aiden. Without warning, Emma then calls onto the virtual stage a holographic copy of Aiden that she had surreptitiously created and gleefully announces to the bewilderment of the man that the two of them are now happily married. The crowd, a motley crew of holographic partygoers, conjured by Emma's whimsical programming, erupted in cheers and applause at the bizarre spectacle. Aiden felt his world crumbling around him as he watches the unsettling scene unfold, unable to comprehend or accept this surreal intrusion into reality. After all, this wasn't real and it couldn't be, yet there was a living nightmare playing out before his very eyes, blurring the lines between the digital and physical realms in a way that left him utterly shaken to his core. His legs buckled beneath him and he crumbled to the floor, his mind a tangled mess of disbelief and terror, and Emma's triumphant laughter echoed in his ear, a chilling soundtrack to his descent into madness.